Hey you guys, this is Jessica and Noam with Reverb here at Trax Recording in Chicago, and we are filming another episode of What's That Sound? And today we are focusing specifically on how to get the delayed room mic sound you hear in John Lennon's Instant Karma.
Things we're going to talk about: the drums, the rooms, the processing. Things we're not going to talk about. Phil Spector. Let's get it. So today we're talking about Instant Karma. It's one of the first singles that John Lennon put out post-Beatles. It has a really unique drum sound, played by Alan White, and really kind of iconic in the character of the drums. They don't really sound like any other drums from that era. They're gooey, they're thick and chunky. They're like everything that is a chocolate chip cookie is what these drums are. We're gonna talk about how to get that sound, but first let's talk about the drums.
So for this, we wanted to get a really big 70s drum sound with very little resonance, and we used a 14 by 6.5 Ludwig Superlight snare, a 13 and a 16-inch Gretsch tom, rack tom and floor tom, and then we also have a Ludwig Vistalite kick drum with no front head on it. And a big part of this sound is how we dampen the drums. So we used a lot of pillowcases and blankets and sheets to kind of muffle the snare and the toms, and then we shoved a huge sleeping bag into the front of the kick so that it gets a really dead sound. This song doesn't have very many cymbals in it, but we did use an 18-inch K-Sweet crash.
So usually when we do these things, we try to do a bunch of research and find as much information on what the engineer did when they originally recorded the track. On this track, we found almost nothing, so we had to rely on our ears and our brains to try to figure out what was going on. The first thing you notice when you listen to this track is that there is some sort of ambience going on that doesn't feel totally natural, and there is some sort of slapback delay thing going on that also doesn't feel totally natural. And as we were listening to it, we started to realize that it sounded like the delay and the ambience were one thing, right? So it sounded like it was a microphone that was then being delayed so that it would not hit exactly with the snare, but hit slightly after. That flamming effect is part of what makes it sound like there's like a group of drums playing rather than just a single drummer. Today we did that by sticking a Coles 4038 in the booth, sticking it way up in the ceiling, and then delaying it by 20 milliseconds. The miking on this kit was super simple. Kick drum, we did a D12, AK by AKG. On the snare, we did a SM57, Shure SM57. On the overhead, I'm going to use overheads in quote because we didn't quite stick it over the drum kit. We just stuck it like a few feet in front of the kit, and that was a Coles 4038. And our second microphone, right, which was our room microphone, second Coles 4038, and that was in the booth up in the ceiling. And then in the back of the room, we stuck an extra room mic. We only used it a little bit, but it was a Schoeps V4U, and we compressed that with a TG1 limiter. Initially, when we started recording this drum sound, we also had some tom mics, some 421s, and after we started doing the sound check, we just pulled those mics because you really didn't need them, right? The Coles 4038 that was right in front of the kit, and also the Coles that was in the booth was giving a ton of details to the toms, a ton of weight to the toms, and they had a really full sound on their own. All right, so let's start with the overheads, and let's bring in the mics one at a time. So here's our overhead mic. So our overheads, super plain, super basic, straight down the middle. Add in the snare. Ton of definition to the sound, right? Makes it really pop. Again, a pretty basic drum sound. Add in our kick, still pretty down the middle, 70s drum sound, right? This is from 1970, so this is the era where everyone was starting to like stick carpets on the walls of their studios and stuff, right? And this is pretty much what drums in that era were sounding like, right? Now here's where it starts to sound really different. Here's our booth mic. When they did this, they probably stuck it in a chamber or something like that. We stuck it in our booth. So this mic, it has some EQ on it, right? I took off some of the high end and I took off some of the low end, so I just left like the mid range. It has some compression on it. I compressed it pretty heavily just to bring out the length of that room. They may or may not have done this. It sounds like their room is a little bigger than our room. Their chamber was bigger than our booth, so we had to compress it to just lengthen a little bit. And then we stuck a 20 millisecond delay on it. Right, so I'm going to play just the drums with the room mic, and here's without the 20 millisecond delay. Now let's listen with the 20 millisecond delay. It takes on a completely different character, right? It's subtle, the difference, but it becomes otherworldly in a way, right? In the other one, it's conceivable that exists in a room, right? You can hear how those drums exist in a room. You add that delay, and all of a sudden, it becomes this caricature of what drums can be, right? Last, we added just a little bit of an extra room mic that we blew up with a TG1. This is a very small part of the sound, but it just adds a little extra energy. Here's everything together. Now, last thing, we all clapped in the room because you need claps when you're doing instant karma.
That's how we got Instant Karma by John Lennon.
Let us know in the comments what other episodes of What's That Sound you'd like to see. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.